guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Several months ago, I did a story on the No Farmers, No Food, the Dutch farmer protests, because the government was basically trying to come in, take all their land, and then have them, curtail and end 200,000 cattle because they want to go to the mealworm and all this other craziness. And they were really trying to force the farmers off their land, and the farmers protested, and it got very close to them actually having their land taken from them, like forced sold to the government. But I wanted to do a little bit of a white pill follow-up to show you that, many times it's, there's the ballot box, there's the soap box, there's I think the other one's a jury box, and the last one's the cartridge, right? The box that goes in a weapon. And so many times, there's doomers out there. And look, I prepare for the worst. I won't even lie. I always prepare for the worst. But here's a case where it looked all doom and gloom for the farmers, and they got enough votes, and they got the system to work for them. And so now, let me put this over here. I thought I had it on my thumbnail there, but this is the good news. Dutch PM Mark Rutte says he won't run for a fifth term after the government collapses. So there was enough pushback that the Dutch, and again, I'm not over there, so collapse may be a strong term, but the Prime Minister basically said, look, we're in an impasse. We can't get anything done anymore. There's not enough support. I'm going to pronounce this as Rutte because I'm an American. I don't want to flip back and forth. Rutte, who became the country's longest serving prime minister in history in August last year, said he plans to leave Dutch politics following the elections later in the year. Leader of the Conservative People's Party for Freedom and Democracy, have served as prime minister since 2010. Now that's interesting because they call themselves conservative, but here in the United States, the conservative are all about farms and farmland and rights and Second Amendment and First Amendment, and that's the conservatives here in the U.S., so there must be quite a big difference. Yesterday morning, I made the decision that I'll not again be available as leader of the VVD, which I guess is one of the political parties. Once the new cabinet is formed after the elections, I will leave politics. He won't run for a fifth term. 56-year-old Rutte, who became the country's longest-serving prime minister in history in August last year, said he plans to leave Dutch politics following elections later the year. He said, in recent days, there's been a lot of speculation about what motivated me. The only answer is Netherlands. Yeah, right. How about the Whiskey Echo Foxtrot weirdos? So anyway, that's stepping down. And he was known as Teflon Mark because he had the ability to endure political storms during his more than 13 years of power. But this was a political storm he couldn't. They say Rutte had faced pressure from the right wing of his own party to take a tougher stance on immigration, and from the rise of right-wing parties more broadly. He's been trying to limit the scope for immigrant families to reunite in the Netherlands. So they also are having an immigration problem. But here's the story I wanted to talk about, and this is from a couple of months ago, and I missed it. Farmers' protest party wins shock Dutch vote victory. The farmers, let me zip this up so you can see it a little better. The Farmers' Party has stunned Dutch politics and is set to be the biggest party in the upper house of parliament after provincial elections. The Farmer Citizen Movement, BBB, was only set up in 2019 in the wake of widespread farmer protests. So here you have a brand new political party, and they're going to be the biggest party in the government. This is why I still have faith in systems. We talk about, it's third world and, collapse and all this other. But the truth of it is we still live in if you know your history and you go back and see, there were actually physical confrontations in the House and Congress. If I remember right, somebody with a cane bashed another member in Congress or Senate in the head. And I don't know if they killed him or not, but they hurt him pretty bad. So we've had some rough times in our histories in a lot of these governments. But here you've got a brand new party set up in 2019, and now they're the biggest party in the upper house. Because the people that normally don't pay attention to politics, the people that are normally quiet, The fence sitters, which I was one for a long, long time, they just say, you know what, just leave me alone. Like, most of that stuff doesn't affect my life. But then when you have immigration that becomes a problem and crime skyrockets, and then on top of that, you have a lot of government coming in and saying, we're going to take away your land that maybe you've owned in generational in your family. Okay, that's enough where the people go, all right, you know what? I'm not going to sit on the fence anymore. As a matter of fact, I'm grabbing the pitchfork and I'm coming to your house. They say, but with the most votes counted, they're due to win 15 of the Senate seats with almost 20% of the vote. This isn't normal, but actually it is. It's all normal citizens who voted, said leader Caroline Vanderplas. Well, that was your first problem, is getting a woman to run the party. I'm just saying. The BBB aims to fight government plans to slash nitrogen emissions, harmful to biodiversity, by dramatically reducing livestock numbers and buying out thousands of farms. But its appeal has spread rapidly beyond its rural heartland on a populist platform that represents traditional, conservative Dutch social and moral values. Shocked by the scale of their success, Ms. Vanderplas told supporters that voters normally stayed home if they lost faith in politics. But today, people have shown they can't stay home any longer. We won't be ignored anymore. I think that's important. I think that's huge. They said it was one of the largest voter turnouts in history. Now, where things get sketchy when things like this happen is when there's enough corruption and there's enough controlling of the ballot boxes and things like that. I remember reading an article back when the newspaper was still a thing, and they were talking about elections in some other country. I don't even remember what it was. I was a teenager, I think, when I read this story, and it was like so-and-so wins the election by 102%. You go, wait a minute, well, that's not statistically possible. It's because they were, and a lot of this stuff still goes on, I think, if I understand correctly, in the Middle East and in some places in South America. So that's when, and many times that's when you start seeing real coups, real things get overthrown. We're a long way from that as of now. Now, what happens if this continues in the cycle where all of a sudden it's record turnout for elections, but look at that, the guy that was in still won and nothing to see here. A water pipe broke and the cameras malfunctioned and it took us 3 weeks to count everything. And the people aren't going to put up with that very much, especially when it means they're going to be taking away your businesses and your livelihoods and your income and your family. All it takes is about 3 days, and you go from a country that's doing relatively well to that might be the end of the government. Believe it or not, that's 9 meals away. 9 meals away, 3 days without food, and people go, that's it. That's it. It's time to make a change. So things can be a lot more fragile than I think a lot of people realize. They say the run-up to the vote was dominated by the sight of farmers' tractors on the streets of The Hague and outside the venue that hosted a pre-vote leaders' debate. Commentator Ben Coates described the result as something of an earthquake in Dutch politics. Although their policies are very much focused on opposing the government's environmental policies, he told the BBC most people would characterize them as right-wing, populist party that was quite anti-EU, anti-immigration, and in favor of banning burqas for Muslims. Standing before supporters on Wednesday night, Caroline Vanderplas wore her trademark green nail polish and a ring featuring an upside-down Dutch flag, a symbol for the anti-government protests. The daughter of an Irish mother and Dutch father, she lost her husband, Jan, to pancreatic cancer as the protests took off in 2019. She's unlike any Dutch party leader, and for many voters, that is her appeal. Well, good for her. And you know what? This right here, when people were going up to listen to the elections and they saw so many of their fellow countrymen standing up and protesting, and they realized, hey, this is where our food comes from. If we lose, the Dutch put out a lot of food. Now, unfortunately for Canada, the truckers did their protest. While they had a lot of backing, the government cracked down on them. And now you've got various bills being pushed through by the Canadian government that is actually removing the ability to protest, removing the ability to see news stories from outside Canada, the inability for a lot of people to speak their minds. So we may see the opposite happen in Canada. It'll be really interesting to see, because I know there's a YouTuber here that I watch. He's an attorney, and he did a lot of streams on the trucker protest in Canada. His name's Viva Fry. He's here on Locals as well, so he has a Locals channel, and he's on Rumble and YouTube as well. I think he came to the United States and is currently in Florida. I don't know if he's just visiting, but I think from my understanding, he's selling everything and moving here. So you've got a Canadian, which, Canada, it was always a joke that if it ever hit the fan, I'm running off to the nowhere Canada to live off the land. And well, Canada's gotten worse than a lot of places, and in very short order. Ever since the bug and the jabs and all that stuff, you really saw governments take a leap at a power grab, which tells me in many cases, number one, I think a lot of people realized, hey, you know what? I was stupid for listening to the government. Well, congratulations. You either know your history or you trust your government. You don't do both. And number two, the government saw how much power they were able to grab. I would expect another 100-year bug to start coming around. Oh, look at that. 4 years later. What a coincidence. I wouldn't be surprised. But congratulations to the Dutch farmers. It looks like they were able to push back and kind of save themselves for now, and I think we need a lot more of that. But it does give you a little bit of a white pill that if enough people stand up and they push back against the powers that be, they can still have a say and they can still make a change, at least for now. Guys, once again, if you're on YouTube, join me on betterbachelor.locals.com. Free speech. We talk about stuff like this all the time without Big Mama YouTube censoring everything, so I'd appreciate it if you join us over there today, and we will see you in the next one.